This time around, it's the turn of security and compliance in Microsoft 365. What's new? What's cool? And more importantly, what can it do for you? Are you ready? Greetings YouTubers, welcome to the channel. Andy Malone, a Microsoft MVP as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. Great to see you again. Okay, I've had loads of requests for security. So what I thought I would do is I would pull together all the latest and greatest and coolest features which are part of Microsoft 365 security and compliance, as well as a few things from Azure as well. Now, what I've done is I've time coded each of the sections, so feel free to jump in and jump out as you will. And as always, I love your comments, questions and feedback. And please do like and share the video as well with your friends. I really do appreciate it. Now, if you've not subscribed, please go ahead, click on that subscribe button, ring that bell, and you're sure not to miss out on the good stuff in the future. So, without further ado, let's get to the demos and I'll be back later to wrap everything up. Enjoy. So the first of my demos kicks off here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And in here, I'm going to just expand the menu. Just before I go any further, you'll notice that something has changed on the menu. First of all, it used to be called Groups. Now it's called Teams in Groups. And the reason is, of course, there was an awful lot of confusion about what is a team and what is a group. So do remember that a Microsoft 365 group is essentially a collaborative group. So it gives you access to a shared document library, a shared mailbox, calendar, contacts. You get Planner, OneNote, and of course shared storage. And fantastic. A team, you can extend it to become a team by just clicking a little checkbox during the creation process, and that extends it so that you can use it not only in Microsoft Teams, but you can extend it with third-party apps. So it makes a lot more sense now that we've got just teams and groups here. Okay, so this session is all about security. So the first place I'm going to go is I'm going to come in now to the Azure AD Admin Center. And in here, I'm going to click on Azure AD. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to come in to the security blade. I want to show you two new features here. The first one is something called continuous access evaluation. And as you can see, a user's access is removed or a client access IP address changes, then continuous access evaluation will automatically block access to the resource or the application in real time. That is awesome. Now, one of the classic attacks in modern computing is if you make changes to somebody's account or you remove access to them, typically they get to stay logged on until they log off and then log back on and pick up a new access token. Well, here the access token is revoked immediately. So this is fantastic. So you can select, I've got a single group here, but you could select all users, individual users, or groups. I love this feature, continuous access evaluation. Also here, I want to come into authentication methods. So in authentication methods, you can now also deploy things like FIDO keys. So FIDO keys are these little USB keys, and you can enable them for all users or just specific users. So again, I can just say, which particular user do I want? And it means that users can now go in and they can register and they can log on for passwordless authentication. Fantastic feature. Of course, if you want to enforce the use of the Microsoft Authenticator app, again, you can deploy it here, not just for individual users, but for specific users as well. Other features that we've got, text messaging. So you can send a text message to a user to prove authentication. I'm sure you've seen them. We get them all the time. The one thing that I will say about that is, though, that you do need to have a text plan for that. So it costs a little bit extra. I've covered temporary access pass in a previous presentation. So if you check out my videos below, then I'm sure you'll find this one here. So there you go. That is authentication methods and policies. Now, moving back into Azure Active Directory, what I want to do here is I'm going to scroll down, 365, and I'm going to come into the security node here. Now, for some reason, and this is the old portal that it keeps bringing you into, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the new security center in 365. All right. So in here, we can see that, again, if you're not familiar with the new next-gen security center, they've been slowly adding a few cool new features. And one of the things that I just love is the Learning Hub. So it's amazing because security is getting so much more complex that we can do the Learning Hub. So definitely check out here. It's absolutely packed with training materials, with videos for everything from Defender for endpoint, things like how to set up the security, how-tos, and so on. This is a fantastic set of resources, and you definitely want to have a look at that. Now, on the subject of learning, there's nothing like getting real hands-on experience and having a good idea of how your users react to things like phishing messages and things like that is really, really important. I covered this in a previous video, but I definitely want to point out the fact that it's recently been updated, and definitely take a look at this. So the idea is that you can come up with a payload and you can deploy a phishing message to your users, and that phishing message, you can then monitor the use of it. So you can create an automation. So the idea is that a phishing attack will get delivered to your users. If they click onto that phishing attack, they will be encouraged to do some training. So it's a fantastic learning tool. All right. So definitely have a look at that. All right. Now, I love to learn. And one of the things, just sometimes the odd little thing, it can be hidden from you. So one thing that I just want to scroll down here and just bring to your attention is the settings in the security center here. Now, if you go into here, you'll notice it says identities. So if I want to go in and switch on Defender for identity, this is where you can switch on all the different settings. This absolutely rocks. So Defender for identity is essentially AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. It can determine the behavior of your users. So things like if you're logging on in London today and then 50 minutes later you log on from Tokyo, that's impossible travel. All right. Now, again, one of the things that you can do is you can also deploy sensors in your organization. So as well as managing internal identity, you can also manage hybrid identity as well. So I can simply go in and add a sensor to one of my servers that I have. I'm going to cover this in a future session, by the way, but I'm just showing you this is where it is today. So this is how you can deploy a sensor. And then if you've got the Defender for Identity license, this is where you're going to pick everything up. Now, it's all about, in the past, we've talked about entity tags. So for example, if you add a sensor in, how cool is this, by the way? You could have obviously lots of different machines here. Now, of course, this is Defender for Identity. So you can earmark a particular machine as being a sensitive machine. And I love this. You can also create a machine that's a honeypot or a honey token. And this type of machine is particularly useful because what you want to do with this, you want to make it attractive for a potential attacker. And by doing that, when they connect to it and start trying to steal content from it, this is a great way, because not only are you learning how they're getting in, but you can also learn what they're getting in interested in as well. The other thing that we've got, the Exchange server here. So again, we can also label Exchange servers. So as well as labeling entity types, you can also exclude entity types as well. So for example, if it's I don't know, certain types of servers that you don't want to bring in. The other thing is you can also monitor and bring in service accounts as well. So you can manage directory services both in Microsoft 365 and also on-premises directory services. So typically here, this would be your admin accounts. Now, of course, you'll need a VPN for Defender for Identity because it's essentially a monitored and a managed hybrid service. So again, you may also want to enable radius accounting here for that. Remote access dial-in user service, by the way. Okay, so that is the settings there for that. Okay. Now, we've also got some other cool features here, and this has recently had a little bit of an upgrade. And what I'm going to do is, if in a future session, I'm going to come back to security and I'm going to do a deep dive. So watch out for that here. Now, up next, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close that down here. The next thing that I want to do is just go and take a quick look at compliance. Now, this is the brand new Compliance Center in Microsoft 365. And the first of the cool features that I want to show you here is this one, Compliance Manager. This is almost like taking a helicopter view of your entire organization. So not only do you get a compliance score, so this tells you, okay, you've got this amount of points. It lets you know, okay, what could I possibly do in order to improve my compliance? So just like Secure Score, Identity Score, and some of the other features, you can go in and, for example, it gives you tools and features and things that you could increase your score. So essentially, you're being scored against similar organizations to yourself, your peers, if you will. Now, so as I said, you've got improvement actions, so you can improve your compliance score, bearing in mind that this is a cloud service provider and Microsoft will do their bit in order to keep you secure and keep you safe. Now, they provide all the encryption and the security and the physical security and so on, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to ensure that you're secure. Now, I love this, by the way. Rather than going through all these kind of various elements individually, we now have solutions as well. So solutions give you access to all the various tools in a single screen. So this is almost like a super user screen. So all those different portals, you'll get access to that. Now, compliance is such an important thing. So again, depending on your industry, so if you're in finance, aviation, oil and gas, petrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, government, finance, whatever, we all have a responsibility to be compliant. And there are many industry assessments that we have to do. Now here you can see that I've got one for GDPR. So this is the European Data Directive. So I can go into this and at a regular basis, I can go in and I can update this and I can go through the various assessment. So you can see where am I in my progress, and it also gives me an idea of what I need to do in order to improve my score and then eventually become compliant. Once you become compliant, you can then print off a report, hand it to the auditor, and you're good to go. Now you can see here that we've got various controls. So we have a number of controls in place, and it gives you details of all the various controls, and it shows you where you're up to. So again, you'll typically see here that Microsoft are doing their bit, but you've still got to do your bit. All right. So as I said, the assessment's really, really useful. Now, the other thing that we've got is you've got a whole bunch of different templates here. Now, some of these are premium templates, so depending on the subscription that you've got, you will get access to some or all of these. So you can see we've got things like ISO 27001, we've got GDPR, as I said, NIST, SP 800, and so on. And these are the very latest in these compliance templates. Now, so definitely take a look at the compliance manager. It's really good and it will help you an awful lot. Now, on the subject of compliance, scrolling down here, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, and you can see one of the features that we have is something called communications compliance. Okay. Now, I was recently teaching a course actually, and it was for a university, and I was asked this question. Some of our students are sending inappropriate content to each other. Now, I'm not one to judge, but of course, the question was, how can we detect it? How can we stop it? So one of the things in the past, you could never really do that, but now you can. So we basically have a choice of different types of policies for monitoring of communication. So you can monitor for offensive language, for sensitive information. So if you're using labeling and classification, you might want to be monitoring for regulatory compliance or perhaps a conflict of interest. Or of course, you might just want to create a custom policy. So for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to monitor for offensive language. Okay. Now you can see I'm going to go in. It's already put the what I want to monitor. Do I want to monitor specific users or all users? Well, in this case, I'm going to start saying all users. And I'm going to put my good friend Megan as a reviewer. So Megan is my reviewer. She is my security administrator in the company. Now, as you can see, communications to monitor, and it's monitoring everything. So it's monitoring everything from Yammer to Exchange, Teams, Skype for Business if you're still using it, and so on. Percentage to review, it means that it's monitoring 100% of communications. And you can see what it's looking for here. Now, you're probably thinking, whoa, Andy, hang on a minute. What does this mean? My privacy is affected here? No. What it's looking for is triggers. So it's looking for any of these potential triggers. So artificial intelligence will detect whether you're potentially threatening somebody. Now, of course, this could all be part of your HR policy, but again, an extremely powerful set of tools. All right. So this is communications compliance. Again, within a college or a university, this might be redirected to the students rather than to everybody. Okay, but that's a really nice feature. So once you've created the compliance policy, you can see if that takes a hit, then it will generate an alert here. Right? So if it detected anything inappropriate, it would generate an alert, and then the administrator could come to the communications reporting area here, and you would see immediately how many policies are in place and if there were any hits on that policy. So there you go. That is called communications compliance. Now, another nice thing, which is really useful, something that we didn't have in security and compliance for many years, was insider risk management. Fortunately, that's all changed, as we now have insider risk management in Microsoft 365. Now, before you kind of get into this, one of the first things that you really need to do is configure some of the basic settings. So I could go in and create the policy, but again, there are a few settings that you kind of want to configure first. So I'm going to head up here into the settings area, and this is really where we have kind of all the default settings. Now, the first thing that you look at here is you can see the privacy. Now, some countries are very, very nervous about showing user names in reports. So to avoid that problem, you can click on the anonymous option here, and that will kind of anonymize everything nicely here. So you do have that option, which is really good. Another thing then is you've got access to all these different settings. So these are the default policy indicators. Now, as you can see, they're all on, and you can see the kind of things that they're monitoring. So things like downloading content, accessing resources, and so on. So the idea is that if you've been earmarked for, I don't know, you're losing your job and you're maybe downloading large numbers of files, that's going to be a trigger. Now you'll notice here that the device indicators is grayed out. That's purely because I've not deployed any devices in Intune. So if I had deployed some devices, this would have lit up. But as I said, I'm just going to skip on this just now. So moving down, we can now see that we've got various other options here. We've got things like security policy violation indicators as well. But you've also got useful device ones there. So I love that one, by the way, connecting a USB drive. So if you're copying content from that. So anyway, as I said, they're all on by default, but you can switch them off. Policy timeframes. So how far do you want to go? Typically an employee will be employed for a couple of weeks or maybe a month's notice before they have to leave. So typically here it will monitor a month's notice plus up to 90 days past access. So should there have been anything unusual, it will obviously find that information for us. Intelligent detections, look for anomalies. So potential anomaly is you're in the office on a Friday night and you're doing mass downloads. Well, first of all, why are you in the office on a Friday night and why are you doing mass downloads? It would flag that up. You can also export the activity information here. So there is a new activity API preview. You can switch that on. That's currently in preview, as is the priority group. So if there's any sensitive groups within your organization, you could also include them as well if you like. So things like managers, administrators, and accountants, and things like that. Next one then is things like physical assets, so physical devices, but again, I've not got any devices in here. This is kind of cool actually. It links into Power Automate. So it's potential here that you can create an automation. So if there is a detection or an alert, what you could do is you could use one of these templates. So the idea is if, let's say, the system detects an employee using Microsoft Office, it will then generate an email to you, and it will alert you that the employee is potentially up to no good. Please note, it also integrates with Teams as well. So absolutely go ahead, switch that on. It's really good. Last is analytics. That's on by default. This is the new preview, and it just means that we have a single source for all our analytics within Microsoft 365. So rather than having multiple different tools, so that's really useful. So there you go. That's some of the settings. So when you're ready to create your first policy, of course, you can either click on the Get Started option there, or you can simply go into policies. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll click into here. And you can, of course, create a policy for every user, or you can do specific users and groups and so on. Now, if an employee is leaving, again, you've got a few options that you can choose. If you suspect potential data theft, if you suspect data leaks, and also things like potential security policy violations. Of course, you could add all of those in here as well. Please note, you can also, if you're using third-party systems, if you're using a third-party HR system here, you can see that there's detail there you can link in to that system as well, if you want to. Now, so templates, they're great, and I do believe that there are going to be more of these added as probably as time goes on, I would imagine. Okay, so moving along, there we go. As I said, you can choose one of these different policies, and again, there's different options here, and you can see there's a couple of preview ones there. So once you've made your choice, it gives you full details of those settings. I'm just going to go ahead and click on Next. Okay, so now it says, okay, let's go ahead and name your policy. So I'm just going to call this my Oslo risk policy. You can put in a description if you want to, and for the purpose, I'll just click Next. Now, you can add individual users or groups, or you can bring in everyone as well. Now, please note that there are certain features that are only available to certain users, and there are other features that are only available if you choose the all users option, as you'll see in a second. So I'm just going to select an individual user at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead, click on the add users option, or of course, if it was a group or a team, you could go ahead and add that as well. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to go in, I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to bring in Bianca. So select Bianca, and then I'm going to click on add. All right. So yep, she's gone in. That's perfect. So click on Next, and you can see you can also, do you want to specify any particular sites that Bianca might have access to? So you can either do sites, or you can do sensitivity labels. So if she's got access to any confidential materials, you could bring that in here. So for the purpose of this little demo, I'm just going to add in, let's say, 3 SharePoint websites. So I'm just going to click onto, let's say, this one, and I'll bring in that one as well. So click on add, and I'll click Next. All right, so now I can add in those sensitive labels if I want to. Again, you can see that they're optional here. So for the purpose of this, I'm just going to click Next. All right, so click on Next, and yeah, just takes a second to go in. Right, now it says, okay, do you want to select a trigger? Now, please note that some of these triggers will only work with when you choose all. All right. So you can see policy indicators. So remember, I was editing the policy indicators. So you can see here, this is the reason why they're all enabled. Okay, so you see everything is enabled just as I set it up. So the key thing to remember here is you can't change it here because they're all ticked. Yes. So if you wanted to change these things, you would need to set them up in the settings. Yeah. So in the settings demo that I did at the beginning. Okay, so this looks good, and I'm just going to click on next. Now, it says I've also got access here for privacy for multiple users here. For all users, you need to enable it for all users. So that was an example of, you see, it's not letting me click it. So what I can do is I can say, yep, I want to go and switch this on. Again, I'm just showing you this now. You would set this up for one or the other, actually, this particular policy. Remember, by the way, you can have multiple policies. So in this case, I'm choosing all my users. The same, you can see it's picked up all the same settings. Just going to click next and then next again. All right. So those policy indicators, you can see it's now selected that triggering event. So that's great. So again, policy indicators, so my options have all gone in as well. You can see everything's there. And again, I'm just going to click on next. All right. So do you want to, you can see I'm just using the default settings. Now, do you want to use the default or custom threshold settings, or do you want to manage your own? Now you can see I've got a warning here. That's just because I've not set something up previously. Again, the policy indicators, there is a follow-on, so I could have added an additional follow-on, but I haven't. But it won't stop me finishing the policy. The policy will still work. So am I happy? Yes, I'm very happy. So just click on submit, and just takes a second, and I'll just save that. And my policy has now been created. Okay, so my policy is here, and sure enough, you can see now that the policy is set up. Now, should a hit against that policy happen, it will go ahead and it will generate an alert here. Beyond that, it will also create a case, and I can then go in and do some investigation. Likewise, the user that hit the case or hit the alert will be listed here. Just close that dialog box down. And again, what you can do is you can also send up or create notice templates as well. So if you want to word a template, a document to a manager or something like that, this is where you could go in, and you can go in and set that up. So there you go, insider risk management and part of security in 365. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, ooh, that's a lot of information. And you're absolutely right. There's an awful lot of good stuff in security and compliance. Now, of course, as I said at the beginning of the session, I've time coded everything. So feel free to jump in and out as you will. Okay, thank you so much for coming by. As always, if you're not a subscriber, I would really appreciate you clicking that subscribe button, ringing that bell for notifications so that you don't miss out on the good stuff in the future. And as always, please like and share the video. So comments, questions, get them down below. And until then, I'll see you next time, and you stay safe out there. Take care. Thanks. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and click on the subscribe button and ring that bell, and you won't miss a thing. See you next time.